Meatball and Mayo. Murder in Rattlesnake Flats. Chapter 1. Exit Grindlehook. The tires of the big white RV hummed against the pavement as they pulled away from Grindlehook, Vermont. The late afternoon sun glinted off the windshield, and the air was thick with that just after a thunderstorm smell. Mayo sat cross-legged on the RV's built-in couch, a notebook open in his lap, the words Grindlehook, the case of the basement bones scribbled across the top. He stared out the window as trees blurred by gray-barked ghosts watching the only home he knew roll off into the distance. "I think Meatball's dreaming again," Robbie whispered, pointing at the snoring French bulldog curled beside him. Meatball let out a snort, kicked a stubby leg, then muttered something under his breath, something only Mayo, Jesse, and Robbie could understand. "Mustard." Under the rug, they hid the mustard. The dog grumbled, his ears twitching. Mayo and Jesse looked at each other. Jesse smirked. Pretty sure he's still thinking about that sandwich from yesterday. Meatball opened one eye. It was a good sandwich. Real cheddar. A crime how little mustard they used. No one else in the RV blinked at the talking dog. Only the boys could hear Meatball, something they discovered one rainy night in Grindlehook after pulling him from a ditch outside the library. He had no collar, a deaf ear, and eyes that looked too human to be just any dog's. Since then, he had helped them crack 2 mysteries, saved a missing girl, and almost got them buried alive in an abandoned ice house. Now, they were heading west, toward a town called Rattlesnake Flats. Dad was driving, his jaw tight. "We'll be in Rattlesnake before dark," he said, more to himself than anyone else. He gripped the wheel like it might float away. New contract. New start. Just keep your heads down. Mom sat beside him with a travel mug, tapping her phone screen and nodding along to a quiet podcast. She glanced back once, smiled at the boys, then went back to scrolling. Mayo knew something was wrong. Dad had been silent since his last call from his company, Gridspan. The new job wasn't a normal one. It was a government-linked contract on some sort of private property. That morning, Mayo had overheard Dad whispering in the parking lot of a gas station. He said not to come, but we have no choice. Jesse leaned closer. "You feel it, too, don't you?" Mayo nodded. "Yeah, something's off." Meatball stretched, rolled over, and gave a low grunt. "I smell something weird ahead. Metallic, like lightning and blood." "Thanks for the cheerful image," Jesse muttered. By the time the sun began to dip below the low, rust-red hills of Rattlesnake Flats, the RV turned down a dusty road lined with power stations, transformers, and humming towers. A sign creaked in the wind. "Welcome to Rattlesnake Flats, home of tomorrow's energy." They pulled into a lot beside a stark gray building that looked like it had been airlifted in from the Cold War. A man in a hard hat was waiting, lean, sharp-faced, and pale as wax. He didn't wave. "That's Mr. Kroll," Dad said. "My boss. He's not friendly." He wasn't, and by morning he was dead. Chapter 2. Welcome to Rattlesnake Flats. The RV rocked gently as it parked beside a row of faded red trailers. The lot was cracked and dusty, lined with a sagging fence and dotted with wiry weeds that looked like they'd bite if touched. A buzz of electricity filled the air like static clinging to skin. Mr. Kroll stood still, arms crossed. His eyes were cold, sharp, and judgmental, a man who calculated rather than conversed. "You made good time," he said to Dad. "Let me show you the control center. The sooner we begin, the better." Dad gave a nod, tight-lipped. Mayo caught the tension in his shoulders. "We'll be fine here," Mom said, already unhooking the coffee maker and pulling out a grocery list. "Boys, stay out of trouble." "Can I explore?" Robbie asked. "Only with Jesse or Mayo," she said firmly. Once Dad and Mr. Kroll disappeared into the grid facility, the boys and Meatball stepped out into the dry heat. The horizon shimmered like glass. Every building in town seemed weathered, like it had seen too much sun and too many secrets. "This place smells like hot wires and bad memories," Meatball muttered. He pawed at the dirt. And someone's watching us. Jesse scanned the street. A truck drove past slowly. A woman peered through a store window, then pulled the blinds. Mayo's stomach tightened. They explored the area behind the RV lot. An alley led to a steep hill littered with coils of black cable and rusted transformers. Mayo saw a single shoe, half buried in the dirt. He didn't like it. That night, over dinner, Dad returned looking pale. "Everything okay?" Mom asked. "It's fine," he said. "Just a lot of moving parts. Kroll wants it all wired by next week." "That's fast. Even for you." "It has to be fast," Dad replied. He stared at his plate. He said there's a deadline. A hard one. Meatball lay beneath the table. He's lying. Something's got him spooked. Real bad. In the morning, the screams started before sunrise. Mayo sat up in his bunk just in time to see a plume of smoke rising from the grid compound. Sirens echoed across the lot. Outside, men in uniforms ran past the RV. One shouted into a walkie-talkie, "We've got a body. Looks like Kroll." The RV door flew open. A local officer stepped in. "Mr. Wexler, we need to ask you some questions." Dad stood, blinking. "What? What's going on?" The officer's voice turned hard. "Mr. Kroll is dead. You were the last person seen with him. We need you to come with us." Mom clutched Dad's arm. There must be a mistake. But Mayo knew. It wasn't a mistake. It was the beginning. Chapter 3. The Man in the Grid. The next morning, Rattlesnake Flats simmered under a haze of desert heat and suspicion. Dad stayed home from the site, benched by the investigation. He spent hours on the RV's couch, staring at nothing while Mom flipped through legal aid contacts on her phone. Mayo sat on the steps outside the RV, notebook in hand, drawing a diagram of the substation. He labeled the fuse boxes, the transformer, the burned-out panel where Kroll had died. Then he added something new, a question mark over the small metal shack behind the grid compound. Restricted access was painted across its side. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Jesse asked, crouching beside him with a bag of trail mix. "That's where the real answers are." Robbie looked up from where he was teaching Meatball a new trick. "Do we have to break in again?" "No," Mayo said. "We're going to sneak in legally." Sort of. An hour later, they stood in the back of the diner, behind Brenda, who was trying to fix a jammed paper towel dispenser. She barely blinked as Mayo asked, "Do you know anyone who used to work at the grid before Kroll came in?" "Sure do. Henry Blackwell. Lived here his whole life until 2 months ago when Kroll fired him for security incompatibilities. Whatever that means. He still hangs around, drinks coffee, reads the paper. See that guy in the denim cap?" They approached him cautiously. Henry looked up with tired eyes. "We're not trying to get anyone in trouble," Mayo said. "But someone framed our dad. We think whoever tampered with the station is connected to something bigger." Henry grunted. "Wouldn't surprise me. Kroll was playing with tech that wasn't on any official blueprints. Said it was government cleared. But I saw things of people coming in late at night. Boxes shipped out with no manifests. One night, I swear I saw him arguing with a man who had no badge, no name, just eyes that never blinked." "Would you show us what you remember?" Mayo asked. Henry scratched his chin. "You didn't hear it from me, but if you want in that back shack, the keypad code's 9-1-7-4. That night, they returned to the compound. The keypad blinked red. Mayo typed the code. Green. The door creaked open. Inside, the air was cooler. Dust floated in shafts of light from a single vent. Racks of strange equipment lined the walls. Servers, old military crates, a whiteboard covered in equations and sketches of circuits, labeled phase drift and neural sync. "What is all this?" Jesse whispered. "Something beyond electricity," Mayo murmured. Meatball hopped up on a chair, sniffed the air, then froze. "He's been here." The man from the motel. And someone else. Suddenly, the door slammed. A tall figure emerged from the shadows. "You shouldn't be here," the man said. His voice matched the one from the motel. Mayo stood his ground. "You killed Kroll." "Why?" The man smiled coldly. "Because he was about to ruin everything. He thought he could make the project public. But there's too much at stake." "Who are you?" Jesse demanded. "My name doesn't matter. But soon, none of this will." He reached for something in his coat. Meatball barked. "The boy's dove." Jesse tackled the switch panel. Mayo grabbed the nearest object, a heavy wrench, and swung it toward the console, sparks flying. The man cursed, retreated into the dark. By the time the guards arrived, the shack was filled with smoke and confusion. The boys were questioned, but not arrested. Henry confirmed their story. And with the shack now exposed, officials from Gridspan swept in. Dad was cleared 2 days later. But Mayo knew it wasn't over. The man in the grid was still out there, watching, waiting. Chapter 4, Shadows Under the Wire. Even after Dad's name was cleared, tension clung to the Wexler family like desert dust. He wasn't talking much, and Mom kept double-checking every lock on the RV. Mayo couldn't stop replaying the scene in the shack. The strange man, the glowing circuitry, the threat. Jesse slumped in the RV's booth with a laptop borrowed from the library. Gridspan's denying everything. Says the shack was unauthorized and that the man we saw was a rogue contractor. Total PR spin. Then we find proof he wasn't alone, Mayo said. Robbie was crouched on the floor, brushing Meatball's coat. Meatball said someone else was in there too, remember? The scent. Meatball raised a paw. Cinnamon, plastic gloves, and ozone. Female. And young. Maybe 20s. She was scared. "Maybe she's a whistleblower," Jesse said. "Or maybe she's next." Later that evening, while Mom took Dad to a therapy appointment in the nearby city, the boys and Meatball returned to the diner. Brenda waved them in with a tired smile. "We're looking for someone," Mayo said. "A woman. Young. Might have worked at the substation or with Kroll." Brenda frowned. "Only one that comes to mind is Lena Harlow. Interned under Kroll. Real quiet. Smart as a whip. Left town the day after he died." "Left or disappeared?" Jesse asked. "Couldn't say. Her folks still live out on the West Ridge. Big yellow house with solar panels." They found the house at sundown. Lena's mother answered the door, eyes puffy. She didn't leave. "She ran," she said softly. "Said someone was following her after Kroll died. She packed a bag and disappeared that night. Haven't heard a word." Mayo stepped forward. "Do you know if she left anything behind? Notes, files, anything?" Reluctantly, she handed over a red flash drive from a drawer. She said, "If anything happens, someone has to tell the truth." Back in the RV, Jesse plugged it in. Files filled the screen, scanned documents, schematics, encrypted reports. "This isn't just grid tech," Jesse whispered. "This is surveillance. Experimental biometric tracking. Emotional pattern recognition." Meatball huffed. "That's why Kroll was killed. He wanted to go public." Suddenly, the laptop screen flickered. A message popped up, "We see you." Mayo yanked the cord. Too late. Outside, tires screeched. 3 black SUVs rolled to a stop in front of the RV park. Robbie gasped. "What do we do?" Jesse looked at Mayo. Mayo stuffed the flash drive into Meatball's vest pouch. "We run." As the first men stepped out of the SUVs in dark uniforms, the boys were already out the back, Meatball in tow, vanishing into the cactus-lined shadows under the wire fence. The truth was out there. But now, so were they. Chapter 5, The Whistle in the Dark. The boys huddled behind a dry creek bed as headlights swept over the RV park. The air smelled of sagebrush and engine oil. Jesse checked his phone, no service. "They'll trace the flash drive," he said, "even if it's not plugged in anymore." "Not if we move fast," Mayo replied. "We find Lena. She's the only one who knows what's really going on." Meatball's ears twitched. "I heard something. A whisper on the wind. Distant, rhythmic. A whistle. They followed the sound toward the edge of the mesa. Down a slope and behind a cluster of old mining shacks, they found an entrance, a slanted metal door half buried in rock. Storm shelter, Robbie asked. Or something else, Jesse said. Inside, the air turned cool and damp. Flashlights illuminated old wooden beams, stacks of rusted tools, and footprints. Fresh. The whistling stopped. Hello, Mayo called out. A figure stepped from behind a support beam. Pale, tense, but familiar.
Lena.
She nodded, eyes darting to the tunnel behind them. You brought it, didn't you? Mayo handed over the flash drive. They're after us too. Lena inserted the drive into a rugged laptop. Kroll was trying to shut it down. The project, SignalNet, was originally a grid control protocol, but it evolved, started mapping human behavior, predicting unrest. Then it moved into influencing emotions. Covertly. Mind control? Jesse asked. Lena nodded. More like emotional steering. Mood conditioning through the power grid. The shack at the substation, it was the prototype hub. Meatball barked. They're coming. Outside, the hum of approaching vehicles echoed through the valley. We'll never outrun them, Robbie said. No, Mayo agreed. But we can expose them. Lena smiled, pulling up a secure portal. There's a live uplink here. We can leak everything. The laptop screen pulsed as data transferred. Blue bars ticked upward. 18%, 32%, 51%. Then the generator kicked. A whine, a surge. The lights flew. EMP blast. Lena gasped. They're cutting the power to stop the upload. Mayo looked at Jesse. Can we finish the upload through the RV's solar inverter? Jesse blinked. If we can get to it. Then let's move. They bolted from the tunnel, Lena clutching the laptop, Meatball guiding them across the rock. Searchlights swept the hill. Back at the RV, Mom was waiting. She pulled them inside and hit the gas. Thought you might need a rescue, she said, grimly. Jesse hooked the laptop to the inverter. Upload. 74%. 89%. 97%. Then, upload complete. On screen, transmission mirrored to news outlets, watchdog groups, and data banks worldwide. Sirens howled outside, but it was too late. Lena exhaled, trembling. We did it. You did it, Mayo said. We just helped. Meatball yawned. Can we stop running now? Mayo looked out the window, where dawn was rising over the canyons. No, but we can drive. Chapter 6, Echoes of Grindlehook. 3 days later, the RV sat parked beneath the wide Colorado sky. It was a temporary breather, the kind that never lasted long. Lena had gone into protective custody. The boys and their parents were lying low at a remote campground while officials untangled the mess. Mayo sat at the picnic table with Meatball on his lap, watching the clouds shift like thoughts across the sky. I keep thinking about Grindlehook, Mayo said. Like something there started this whole mess. Jesse glanced over his shoulder from where he was sketching circuit diagrams in a notebook. You mean Dad's old job? Mayo nodded. And that weird blackout we had. I didn't think much of it at the time, but maybe that was SignalNet, too. A test. Meatball grumbled. Don't like unfinished stories. Neither did Mayo. That night, he looked through Dad's project files from Vermont. One folder stood out. Black Line 7, an older contract with missing reports and corrupted logs. Its last entry was dated 2 days before they left Grindlehook. Mayo turned to Jesse. What if what happened in Rattlesnake Flats didn't start there? What if it started in Grindlehook? Robbie peeked over his comic book. That creepy substation with the all graffiti? Mayo nodded. I think there's more. And I think someone didn't want Dad to find out. That night, Meatball whined in his sleep. Circles in the frost, a voice in the wire. Mayo sat upright in his bunk. His gut said they weren't done yet. By sunrise, the RV was rolling again. back toward Grindlehook, back where the echoes began. Chapter 7. The Return Signal. Grindlehook hadn't changed. The trees still leaned with that eerie tilt, like they were trying to whisper secrets. The town's welcome sign was chipped, hanging by one chain. The same crooked lamplight flickered at the edge of the park where the boys had played a game of flashlight tag just weeks ago. But something was different. The silence felt heavier. As the RV crept down the familiar gravel road, Meatball pressed his nose against the window. "They know we're back." "Who?" Robbie asked nervously. "Whoever tried to shut this all down in the first place," Mayo said. Their parents were skeptical, but when Mayo showed them the missing data files and Jesse explained the SignalNet overlap with Dad's earlier contract, Dad turned pale. "I always thought the project was too ambitious. We were told to shut down Black Line 7 when funding dried up. But now I wonder." That night, the family parked the RV near the abandoned substation on the outskirts of Grindlehook. The place looked worse than Mayo remembered. Graffiti-covered walls, shattered glass, coils of wire scattered like nests. Inside, they found it, an old server rig buried behind false panels. "It's still running," Jesse whispered. "It's broadcasting," Mayo corrected. "Look." Meatball's ears perked. "Same frequency from Rattlesnake Flats." Suddenly, the floor beneath them vibrated. A hum, a pulse. "What is that?" Mom asked, backing toward the door. Dad knelt and touched the metal grate. "It's live. This place was never shut down. It was buried." Then, a screen flickered to life on the wall, a single image. A boy's face.
Mayo.
Then static. "What was that?" Jesse asked, stunned. "Some kind of facial mapping?" Dad muttered. "Maybe an old test capture." "No," Mayo said slowly, his voice dry. "That wasn't old." Robbie pointed to the corner where a red light blinked. A camera. They were being watched. Outside, a low rumble. "Engines." "They're coming," Meatball growled. "Then we end this," Mayo said. He stepped to the server rack, pulled the emergency lever. Sparks burst. The hum stopped. For the first time, the silence in Grindlehook was real. Chapter 8. Static Truths. The sparks from the emergency lever left a burnt tang in the air. Mayo stumbled back, shielding his eyes as the server groaned its last. The substation fell into deep, almost unnerving silence. Jesse flipped open his multimeter. No current. "It's dead." "Let's hope it stays that way," Dad muttered. But Meatball was still staring at the blinking red light in the corner. "It's not over," he said. Mayo followed his gaze. "Cameras still on?" Jesse climbed a utility ladder, bolted to the wall, and yanked the camera free. Sparks danced, and the lens cracked in his palm. "Now it's off," he said. They returned to the RV just as the engines they'd heard earlier rolled past. A black SUV, tinted windows, no plates. They didn't stop, Mom noted, tense behind the wheel. "They will," Dad said. "They're watching to see if we leave." The family agreed to stay one more night. Mayo and Meatball took first watch from inside the RV, scanning for movement. "What was that face on the screen, really?" Mayo asked. Meatball licked his paw. "You saw it too. It wasn't just you. It was something trying to be you. A copy, or a lure." Before Mayo could respond, Jesse called from the back room. "I got into the backup logs." They crowded around his laptop. The logs were old, encrypted until Robbie suggested a password, signal root. It worked. Line after line of code appeared. But then, something strange, a voice recording, dated a week before they had left Grindlehook. Dad's voice. "If anything happens to me, tell the boys not to trust the system. It's deeper than we thought. I'm pulling out." The recording ended. Silence. Dad's face had gone pale. "I never said that. Not like that." "You think they made it?" Mayo asked. "Or someone did. To scare me. Or condition me." They all stared at the screen. "Someone's been manipulating more than the grid," Jesse said. They've been manipulating us. Outside, the wind shifted. Mayo clenched his fists. Then we find out who. And we finish this. Chapter 9. The Final Circuit. The morning broke cold and gray. Mist hung over Grindlehook like a curtain, veiling the town in soft dread. The RV sat motionless, its windows fogged with breath and tension. Mayo stood outside in his jacket, staring at the substation ruins. Meatball paced beside him, unusually quiet. What if the real threat was never the grid? Mayo murmured. What do you mean? Jesse asked, emerging with a portable hard drive. I mean, what if this was all about something inside the grid? Something someone hid there. Dad joined them, rubbing his temples. SignalNet was designed to detect anomalies, power surges, unauthorized users, communication failures. But what if someone found a way to use it to store data? To transmit messages without anyone noticing? Jesse plugged the hard drive into the laptop. That's what I think these logs are. Not just code. Messages. Layers under layers. They worked through the morning, decrypting. One file, marked Ghosted Echo, refused to open until Robbie tugged Mayo's sleeve. Try the word you used to name Meatball. Spaghetti. No, the first name. When he barked. The real name. Mayo typed, Argus. The file opened. A video feed, grainy and distorted, played. A man in a dark room, whispering. Project Helix lives in the grid. They didn't shut it down. They moved it. They use people to carry signals. If you're seeing this, you've already been tagged. Then, static. Mayo sat back. Tagged. Meatball growled. Tracked. Followed. Used, Jesse said. Dad, they're using your projects to track movement across the country. Rattlesnake Flats, Grindlehook, probably more. Dad looked stricken. We have to expose this. They uploaded everything to a secure server. Jesse scrambled the signal trail. Mayo wrote a report. By sunset, the RV rolled out of Grindlehook for the last time. As they crossed the state line, a final surge of static erupted on the radio. One word buzzed through the white noise. Argus. Meatball's ears twitched. They know, he said. But now Mayo answered, so do we. The road stretched ahead, and the family leaned into it, toward whatever mystery came next. The end.